Welcome into the Book It podcast. I'm your host, Brendan Moran. Today, we're going to be talking about the second part in our series on seasonal and part-time hiring, and that is, where are we going to find these applicants? In our first episode, we had talked about who these individuals are. Now we're going to be talking about the where. So if you missed that episode, go back, take a listen, and jump over to this one where we're going to be talking about where we are going to find these applicants. Today's episode is so jam-packed that we're actually going to have to split it into two different ones. So this is going to be part one on our Where to Hire series, and I'm going to jam-pack as much of my great tips on where to hire great applicants. And so without further ado, let's dive right in. So now that we know the who, we know a little bit about their story, we know why they're motivated to work with us, their life situation, and why all that matters. We know about their motivations, why they're going to be working with us. And we know that there's not a single type of person that we're looking for that's warm with a pulse. We understand that there are a number of unique individuals out there, and that depending on where they're at in their life, that is a specific type of person who might be interested in the position we have to offer. So where are we going to find these individuals? Because now that we know the who, we can figure out where to find them. I'm going to be going through 6 different tips that I've utilized in a rental business just like yours. And stick with me until the end because number 6 is by far my favorite, and it comes with a cost savings. All right, first tip. We're going to expand where you are looking. So the average rental business, all they do is they choose one platform, they have one posting, they put it up when they need someone, and then as soon as the first few people come in, they pick up the phone, they call a few people, they bring them in, they hire them, and they're on a truck going somewhere by the end of that day. I've seen that happen way too often. It's a very reactive form of hiring. We're going to be talking a little bit about reactive hiring in our next episode that we talk on hiring, which is when to hire. But we want to get away from reactive hiring. In order to do this, we also need to expand our options and where we are finding people. So most people are going to post on Indeed, or they're going to post on ZipRecruiter or Monster. You might post on LinkedIn, although I don't see that as often. You might even throw something up on Craigslist. I bet you didn't think that people still use Craigslist to find jobs. I've hired people off of Craigslist within the last 5 years, and some of them are actually really good. So you never know who is looking for a job and where they're looking. And in fact, if you ask people where they have gone to look for a job, that's a really good place to start because they're going to tell you where you can find other people similar to them. What applications are you using? And believe me, applications are popping up all over the place as quickly as people are developing them. And they're getting in the hands of individuals who are desperately searching for work out there. And if you're not paying attention to those shifts in the market, you're going to miss where potentially your ideal applicants are currently looking. So don't be afraid to look at applications that are popping up, especially ones having to do with gig work. We're going to talk about gig work here in just a minute. So sticking with the job boards, you're going to have different types of applicants for different types of platforms. So I'd mentioned LinkedIn before. Most people are not going to be looking at LinkedIn to hire a part-time or seasonal person. And why might that be? The reason, of course, is because you expect there to be more professionals who are looking for maybe white-collar or more highly skilled positions on LinkedIn. And I have to tell you, that might be the case. It also could be the case that you find someone that they do work a little bit more of a desk job, but on the weekends or in the evenings, they have some available time. They're looking for some extra work. They'd like to be paid to maybe stay active, or they're saving up for something and their current 9-to-5 just isn't cutting it in order to save what they need to save. So I have found some very good employees by searching in places that business owners just write off immediately. In addition, you want to make sure you're not limiting your options to just one platform, because some people will never be on one platform and they will always be on another. And so what you want to do is you want to see what type of applicants you're getting from a range of different platforms. You want to collect that data and you want to see who is turning out to be the best employees, who has the best availability, who has the best work quality. And once you have those numbers in, if then you taper that down to a smaller list of platforms that you typically post on, then I would stick with that. Now let's move on to our second tip. Employee referrals. I think every single business owner knows exactly what I'm talking about because they've implemented it within their business. They go, they talk to their employees and say, hey, is there anyone that you know? Please send them my way. And then that's usually that conversation. And if they're really feeling desperate, they might even plead with their employees. Hey, if you really know anyone, hey, if you have that buddy, we don't even have to put them on payroll. Is anyone looking to pick up an extra couple $100 this weekend? And you start to get very, very desperate, and everyone's going to prey on that. What you want is a referral system within your business that does two things. The first is you want to open up referral windows. And there's a couple reasons for this. What you don't want to do is have a referral window that is all the time, every single day, every single part of the year, maybe outside of your slow season. It's just open up year round, at least within your busy season. The mistake in doing that is you're not drawing attention to it, and you're not creating an environment where people are motivated and inspired to act. We do the same thing in marketing and in sales. When we want someone to act on something, we put a deadline on it. And we say, hey, that deal that I've offered you at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, this deal goes away. And we do that for a very specific reason. When people understand that there is a limitation of resources, it creates a very natural urgency to act within a very specific period of time. We want to do the same thing with our referral process. We want to open up that window. And then this is the second part of the system. We want to individually go to your best employees and have a very specific conversation with them about who they know that they could refer. We're not going to ask them, do you know if someone might want to do this? No, it's, hey, John, who do you know that would be a really good fit for a role with us? I'm not sure that I know. I've just thought about it for like 4 seconds there, and no names are coming to mind. Okay, John. So how about a brother? Do you have any brothers? How about a sister? How about any friends? Any friends of yours that don't have a job right now? Do you have any cousins that are in the area? How about, you're a little bit fresh out of high school. Any of your high school friends? How about any of your college friends? Do you have any buddies from college that are looking for any work? You're in that bowling league. How about that gym that you go to? I know that you're going to church. Is anyone at your church interested? Do you know if anyone in your church is interested? Have you talked to your pastor? Is your pastor aware of anyone in the congregation that might be looking for work right now? And so what we're doing, and we're not going to interrogate them, but what we're doing is something very strategic. When someone asks you a question, your brain does not go to every single corner of your memory and extrapolate every single piece of relevant information. We have a ton of file folders in there. And when you start asking about specific things within those file folders, you start to unlock a little bit of that memory. And it also helps the individual that you're talking to understand that you're not just saying, generally, do you know someone? You're saying specifically, are these people that might be interested? And you're letting them know that you're serious about this. You're letting them know it's not just a casual conversation. You're very intentionally asking them. A lot of business owners, what they'll do is they will assign a very arbitrary amount of money to a referral. It'll be like $100. It might even be a couple $100, even $250. My thought is this: spend a little bit of time figuring out what your cost is in recruiting, vetting, and hiring a new employee. Figure out some of the costs associated with that. Figure out some of your costs on turnover and what it costs for you to hire the wrong person. And then when you have that dollar amount, find somewhere underneath that dollar amount as your referral reward. It's often been said, I don't get out of bed for X amount of dollars. In order sometimes to get people to act, you want to have something that is very motivating for them. Now, don't get me wrong. I have seen referral programs where there is no exchange of money work extremely well. And so my recommendation is to avoid paying out a referral fee whenever you have the opportunity. Instead, what I would do is I would maybe send a gift card, take that employee out for lunch or for dinner. So whether that's $100, couple $100, there's a couple of things that I want us to keep in mind here. The first is that, yes, some people are highly incentivized to act based upon earning money off of a referral. By and large, what I've seen, and this is just my experience, I don't know if there's research done on this, but by and large, what I have seen is this. When you pay someone for a referral, they will try to get any name under the sun that they can possibly find, and they will bring that information in, they will deliver it to you, and they will not have necessarily vetted this person. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but you're not effectively getting names that someone is going to put their name behind. What they're trying to do is earn money. Instead, what I would focus on is, would you like to build a culture where people that are like you, people that you know, are the individuals that you work with? So I've worked with friends in the past, and it's been an absolutely exciting and fun experience. Anytime that I have the opportunity to work with people that I know and that I like and that I already spend my time with outside of work, and now I can do it inside of work, that's fantastic. That is a great selling point. Who's your best friend? Is your best friend looking for some extra work? Would you like to work with your best friend? What about your network of friends? And then expanding out from there. Is there anyone that you'd really like to help? Someone that's maybe in a tough situation. They're a hard worker, but they've just caught a couple of bad breaks and you would like to support them. Well, why don't you connect them with us? Let's see if it's a good fit for them. So by playing on that aspect of it, in my mind, we're building a little bit of our community and culture rather than making it purely transactional. So we want a relational referral system versus a transactional one. With that being said, there may come a time and a place to provide compensation for a referral. And there's a couple of different ways that I'm going to suggest that very briefly. One is people are often very delighted by a surprise. Someone makes a referral and maybe that individual turns out to be an absolute rock star. You take that other individual out for lunch and you say, hey, thank you so much for introducing this person to the business. It's been so fantastic. I just wanted to make sure that you know that I appreciate you and I see all that you do for us and for the business. So often, very personal interactions mean far more than us handing money over to someone. Now, often what people will say they want is more money. And this is not necessarily a discussion on money at large, but the money itself is only part of the picture. What we really want is connection and belonging. So my advice is start with that connection and belonging, and then bridge into the more transactional side of things. And if you want to assign a dollar amount, $100, couple $100, I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with that. Just understand that people are not getting out of bed for $100 or $200 for the most part. They might say that they will, but that's really not what's motivating most people. What's motivating is the direct interaction that you have with them and the relationship that you have with them. All right. That's number 2. Let's go on to number 3. Our number 3 tip is community-based recruiting. And there's a couple elements of this. So in our first element, we have, where is it that you are looking? We've talked a little bit about this, but might an association in your area be searching? Might a religious organization in your area be searching? Might there be a locally public-funded workforce center in your local area? So when we look at some of these community-oriented organizations, we can leverage those organizations to help us with our recruiting. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to fully replace our recruiting measures, but this is another way that we can find applicants without going out and doing the work to try to figure out who needs us. This is yet another strategy that's beyond just posting on a job board. And so what I mean by this is, you could go to a workforce center and say, this is what an ideal candidate in my business looks like. Here's the type of hours that we have. Here's the type of pay. Here are some of the questions that we're going to ask. And here's some of the ways that we vet someone. So in a business like this, yes, someone needs to be physically fit. They need to have some stamina to them. Depending on the role, they might have to drive, so need to have a license. They need to be able to show up on time. So these things are obviously basic. But not everyone that goes into a workforce center is going to have those capabilities. So you give them that information and say, whether it's morning or night, you can pass along my information to someone that's interested in this role and just connect them with me. Now they're going out there and they're recruiting on your behalf. Second, you could go to a religious organization and you could talk to a pastor or a minister within that organization and say, is there anyone in your congregation that's currently looking for work? Okay, if they're not looking for work, can I give you this information? And if someone ever is searching for work, and not just for work, maybe someone's a little bit tight on money. Do you think that people relay some financial concerns to their minister or to their church organization? Absolutely. That is a topic that does come up in a spiritual community. And so a pastor that says, hey, if you're looking for anything part-time, I got this information, why don't you try calling this individual? You can do the same with any number of organizations. Now, the trick on this is you can't simply make contact once and never follow up. Most of the time, just like when you hand someone a business card, that's going to end up in the trash. If you give someone some information, even a well-intentioned person who might set that on their desk, at some point, paper after paper after paper is going to end up on top of it. If you simply shoot them a text or a call or send them an email and say, hey, I was just thinking about you. I hope all is well. No pressure at all. But if anyone does come to mind, please feel free to hand out my information. I'm really looking forward to seeing who I can help support in a position like this. Now, the second aspect of this is not just looking at who within the community can kind of go out and do your recruiting for you, but where in the community do you have opportunities to get someone's information? Where in the community can you post publicly that people can find you and reach out if they match that criteria? So oftentimes, if you only post on a job board, you're only getting people that are actively looking for work. And I have to tell you, I know a lot of people that would take on a second job if they could find a second job. And half the time, these individuals aren't necessarily actively looking. So if you can capture them at the right time where they're thinking about this as an opportunity, they're going to potentially reach out. So picture this. A Facebook group that is centered around your local area, and you post on there, and there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. You can say, hey, is anyone here looking for this type of opportunity? Here's some information on it. Here's how to contact me. So that's option one. That's not my preferred method. My preferred method is option two, which is where you're more likely to find a response. And that is, does anyone know of someone who would be a perfect fit for this opportunity? Now, I treat this as we all have a grandmother, and that grandmother is usually on Facebook. And as soon as she sees that, she's thinking, oh, that's a perfect opportunity for my grandson. And that's absolutely what we're looking for. We're looking for people in the community that are thinking of other people that they know. Because if I ask you, hey, are you looking for work? It's like, well, no, I'm actually retired. Okay, well, do you know someone that's looking for work? Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know several people that are looking for work. People will not always think of, do I know someone who this would be a good fit for? Instead, they're thinking, well, that's not the right fit for me. Because so often in our brains, we think about ourselves before we think about others. And that's not just a selfishness piece. That's a part of our human DNA. And so we have to change that messaging in order to get a different outcome. So we don't want to ask the question of, is this you? We sometimes, and potentially most of the time, we want to ask, is this someone that you may know? So we're going to go out to these community organizations. We're going to maybe post on some community platforms. And this also includes physical listings. I know a lot of us think that a physical listing is dead, or I don't have the time to do a physical listing somewhere. If you have a job description, you can post that on one page. If you can post that on one page, print that page and put a sack of those in your car, every single place that you go, if it's to your gym, if it's to your coffee shop, wherever it is, and you can hand these out to employees, you can ask people to do this. There's a million different ways of doing this. And all they have to do is say, hey, I'm wondering if I can post this on your board so that way I can let people know that we're hiring. Well, most of these places will say yes. Some of them will say no. That's okay. Just move on. There's no need to go out of your way to hit up every single location you can possibly find. And if anything, what I would say is stick within a 10-minute radius of your primary office. Don't go all over the place. Find a few places, target those places, put up some listings, put up some information, have your contact information on there. And if anything, I would put less information. Basically what you're hiring for, a couple of details, maybe the amount that you're going to pay, and some contact information. We're going to get a little bit more into the hook that I'm going to put on every single job posting, whether it's a physical or online or on Facebook or anywhere else, in order to get the right applicants looking at your information. So that's 3. Let's do number 4. Now, number 4 builds off of number 3 a little bit. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at proximity. I don't know about you, but I've met a bunch of people that are fairly highly paid, and they actually work in another state than what they live in. I've seen people commute every single week. I've seen people commute as needed. It doesn't really matter, because at some point in time, when you're paid a certain amount of money, you'll kind of go anywhere. For the majority of us, we don't want to go past 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, let alone an hour. And what I'll often see is we're posting a job and it's capturing people in a very, very broad geographic area. And what we want to avoid is finding the individuals that are 45 minutes away. Because if we have a lower paid hourly position, our odds of getting someone 45 minutes away to consistently come and show up for even a 4-hour shift is fairly low. That's a pretty big ask. And we'll get into what we can do with applicants that are outside of our general radius, because I have an absolutely killer idea that's going to help you capture those people and a value add for your business. But at least for now, for tip number 4, we want to hyper focus on that very, very close radius. Whether we're posting something physically on some sort of board inside of a restaurant or a gym or somewhere else that's similar, if we're posting online or a Facebook group or wherever it ends up being, I want you to spend a lot of your time very, very closely looking for applicants in your general proximity. If someone can walk to work, you're far more likely to retain this individual over time. Because when we lower the barriers that prevent people from wanting to show up for this type of work, we make it easier on all of us, and consequently, they stay longer and they enjoy that far more. Now, what I promised when we first started this was I was going to keep these to about 10 or 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop us here at tip number 4, and we're going to do the remaining couple of tips and a bonus tip for you, since you're going to have to wait until the next episode comes out, on where we are finding our employees for event or equipment rental businesses. I promise you the best is yet to come. I've saved some of my best tips for last. So thank you for joining me for another episode of the Book It podcast. I'll see you on the next one.